All right, let's talk about Montreal's real estate market, because right now it's telling two completely different stories at the same time. You've got these headline numbers for July 2025 that just scream red-hot market. But, when you actually start to dig a little deeper, a much more complicated picture emerges. So what is really going on? Let's break it down.
So let's just jump right in with the big number, the one that's grabbing all the headlines, plus 10%. I mean, wow, that's the year-over-year jump in home sales. And a number like that, it really makes you stop and ask, is Montreal's market just getting too hot?
And look, we're not just talking about a little bump here. This was the busiest July the market has seen since the absolute peak of that pandemic frenzy back in 2021. You remember that, right? It was wild. Well, we're getting back to that kind of activity, which honestly just goes to show how incredibly resilient this market has become.
Okay, so let's get into our first section here, Montreal's hot July. We're going to dig into what's actually driving all this heat. What do the numbers say about how strong this market truly is?
So, the big question is, who's in control? Is it buyers or sellers? Well, while we did see a few more homes come up for sale, we're talking a tiny 2% increase. That is really just a drop in the bucket compared to the number of people out there looking to buy. And that imbalance, it means sellers are still very, very much in the driver's seat.
All right, time to decode the data. Let's peel back some of these layers and look at the hard numbers. We're going to zero in on the Montreal Census Metropolitan Area, the CMA, because honestly, that's where the real story is.
Okay, just so we're all on the same page, take a look at this map. This is the area we're talking about. When we say the Montreal CMA, it's not just the island. It's also Laval, the North and South Shores, all of it. So keep this map in your head, because every single stat we're about to throw at you applies to this entire region.
Here's our first big number, 3,731. That is the number of homes that sold across the CMA in July. Just July. It's that massive volume that really confirms the high-octane activity we've been talking about.
And with all that activity, you know what comes next. Prices are going up. The median price for a single-family home has now hit $625,000. Think about that. Even with all the economic uncertainty out there, values aren't just holding on. They are still climbing. But, and this is a big but, this is where the story starts to get a little more complicated. Now, a 7% price gain year over year is huge, don't get me wrong. But it's actually a slowdown from the 10% pace we were seeing earlier this year. And this is really our first clue that maybe, just maybe, the market is starting to gently tap the brakes. And this chart? It shows perfectly why you just can't paint the entire region with the same brush. The growth is all over the place. I mean, look at Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Sales exploded, up nearly 30%. But then you look at the South Shore, and it was a tiny 2% bump. It's that classic saying, right? All real estate is local.
Okay, so with all this talk about a hot market, there's one thing that's got to be on everyone's mind, bidding wars. So let's talk about it. Let's try and separate the fact from the fiction.
So, is it still a total bidding war frenzy out there? I mean, a seller's market just makes you picture chaos, doesn't it? Multiple offers flying around, prices soaring way over asking. But is that what's really happening on the ground right now?
Now, before we answer that, we have to get really clear on the definition. The official term overbidding is super specific. It's not just about a house selling for more than the asking price. No. To count, it has to have multiple offers, and the final sale price has to be at least 5% higher than what it was listed for. That distinction is absolutely crucial.
And here's the big reveal. It might surprise you. Only 11% of sales in July actually met that super strict criteria. So, yeah, overbidding is a real thing. It's happening, but only in about 1 out of every 10 sales. For the other 89% of transactions, that bidding war frenzy narrative, it's really more myth than reality.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second and put Montreal's market into a national context. How is our city stacking up when you compare it to the other major real estate hubs in Canada?
Honestly, the difference is like night and day. While Montreal has been chugging along with this steady, sustained growth, markets like Vancouver and Toronto have been on a total roller coaster. We're talking price drops, weakening demand. It really seems like Montreal is marching to the beat of its own drum right now.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This comes from the experts. Hélène Begin, she's a senior economist at the Quebec Professional Association of Real Estate Brokers. She confirms it. She says, and I'm quoting here, that Montreal stands out positively, especially compared to places like Vancouver and Toronto that have been hit much harder. But, of course, Montreal doesn't exist in a bubble. The market is absolutely being shaped by some pretty powerful economic forces. So, what are the headwinds that we all need to be watching out for? Okay, there are a few big pressures in the mix. Right here in Montreal, unemployment is ticking up, which means less job security for a lot of people. At the same time, you've got this stubborn inflation across the country that's forcing the Bank of Canada to keep interest rates high. So what does that mean for you, for the average person? It means fixed mortgage rates are being pushed up, making it more and more expensive to borrow money. All of this is creating a real climate of uncertainty.
And all of this brings us to the final, and you could argue the most important piece of this whole puzzle. What does this all mean for the people who actually live here, the people who work here and want to buy a home in Montreal?
And this quote, it really is the bottom line. A recent analysis put it bluntly, saying Canada's major markets have never been this unaffordable. Just let that sink in for a second. When you stack up average household incomes against today's property prices and today's mortgage rates, we are in completely uncharted territory.
And this is the central paradox of Montreal's market right now. On the one hand, if you compare us to other big Canadian cities, yeah, Montreal is still relatively affordable. But, and this is key, for Montrealers themselves, the combination of those rising prices and higher interest rates means we are facing a historic affordability crisis right here, right now.
So there you have it. That's the two-sided story of Montreal's market. You've got this remarkable strength on one side, clashing with this massive, growing affordability challenge on the other. And it leaves us with this one critical question for the future of the city. In a market that's both this resilient and this expensive, where do we go from here?